You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we show business owners and entrepreneurs how to reclaim, reconnect, and refocus their life by bringing you the top real estate professionals in the industry. We'll help you diversify into real estate by equipping you with the tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Ciminillo. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Reinvest Podcast, episode number 88. This is a pretty cool podcast episode for us, and you will find out soon as to why. But back in the saddle is Seth, back from a long road to recovery. You're shy one organ, but
shy two organs.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
That's right. That's what I hear. I hear you don't actually need them.
If you ever need to know how to go through a crisis surgery and have your abdomen opened up, Seth is your guy here, and you would probably do that for a nominal fee.
Nominal fee, yeah. I'll take it case by case.
No, we're excited for today. So this is kind of something that was birthed out of your trip to the Best Ever Conference, which is the importance of why you need to network with other people in the space, and that can come in a lot of shapes and sizes. But Alex Felice, our guest today. Alex, how are you?
I'm great. I'm the luckiest guy on earth. Thanks for having me.
Is it Alexander or Alex, or what do you prefer?
Everybody calls me Alex, but I always write it as Alexander on the internet.
Your pen name, you kind of like lean.
But it's probably your real name.
Who said a pen
My
name?
real name is Alexander. Everybody calls me Alex, but if you write Alexander on the internet, then everybody who doesn't know me, when they reach out and they're like, "Hey, Alexander, let me sell you something," and I know that it's spam.
Gotcha.
Oh,
wow.
Shoot. There's actually a little strategy behind that there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so if somebody calls me Alexander, I know they don't know me.
It's like, Alexander, have you thought about, okay, click, gone, done. So what brought you to the Best Ever Conference back here in the spring?
Yeah, that was my third time going to Best Ever Conference. I am the world's most extroverted person. I checked. So I go to a lot of conferences. Yeah, go to a lot of conferences. That's a particularly good one.
How do you quantify being the world's most extroverted person?
I don't. I just say it.
You know what? No, I'll vouch for you. I will vouch for you. Guys, if you're listening to this, go to his website, and he has a tab called Strangers, and you can book something on his website for a 30-minute call. That's like Bob Goff stuff where he puts his phone number in the back of the book.
Actually, I record those as content, but yeah, I talk to any and everybody who will have a conversation with me for whatever purposes that I can be useful to them. Whether it's, I'm useful in a lot of different ways, but yeah, if you want to chat, it will get recorded, but everybody is welcome and encouraged to sign up.
Wow. So if you're listening to this episode and you're like, who is Alexander Felice? So Alex, I heard about you from your involvement with Brandon Turner, the podcast that you've been helping with and collaborating with him on, the Better Life podcast, which was it? Have you been a year yet? Have you guys started a year ago?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot of
I love how you called me, helped and coordinated it and collaborated it. I think I
produced
did
it.
99% of the work, and Brandon showed up to talk every once in a while.
But you know what? This is the world we live in. When you have a brand name like that, there's a disproportionate amount of recognition.
It's all right.
So
he gets all the
hopefully
credit.
He does. Yeah. Well, but we're gonna poke some holes in that today. So you've got an interesting story, an interesting journey. Let's jump right in. How did you get to where you are now? Were you always kind of business savvy? What's your backstory?
Yeah, I don't think of myself as very business savvy today, actually. What's interesting is the reason I'm able to identify and connect with people really well is because I spent 31 years as a professional fuck up in in most ways. So I think a lot of Americans our lives are very easy. And so we kind of just dawdle through it, making whatever we make, thinking that's not our lot in life. And I did the same thing. And then we get wrapped up in consumerism because it's exciting and fun to buy things. And then we end up in debt, and you just end up, trudging through life week to week, month to month, paycheck to paycheck. And sometimes, if you're lucky, a catastrophic event will come along and
wake you up.
Life has a good way of smacking the ever living out of you, and it did such a thing to me. And I realized that my financial problems were born of my own poor choices, and my lack of ambition was it was a direct result of my lack of focus and lack of goals. And yeah, so I was just, trudging along with this kind of mediocre life. I was very confident and arrogant. I had nice clothes and a nice car and a lot of debt. And so, you know, I lost all of that in one fell swoop. Thankfully, at the time, it was very painful. And so I got my life together and I realized I was like, well, maybe if I stop making poor financial decisions, like maybe if I stop spending all my money and live below my means, then maybe I'll have a little bit extra. Who fucking knew, right?
It's a novel idea.
Yeah, who knew?
So real quick, do you mind if I ask you, like, what was the rock bottom? I mean, what did that look like?
Yeah, DUI.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was an alcoholic, and a little over halfway to being a drug addict. So, got in trouble, got arrested, lost my job, and I remember being like, man, I barely had enough for the legal bills, and the legal bills weren't much. I had nothing. I had no savings, and I was like, dude, I just made like 6 figures, and it went away in a zap, and it kind of just, it hit me really hard. I was like, this is my fault. And
So you
I think
took ownership of it, though.
Say it again?
You took ownership of it.
Yeah, and I think that's the awakening for a lot of people's second lives. Their Phoenix moment is when they really start to take responsibility for themselves. I think that's not the only skill that you need, but that's the skill that separates basically children from adults, is people who take, radical self-responsibility for themselves. And that will get you certainly to a first level of financial freedom. That sort of mindset alone is just like, dude, I'm messing this up. Right. And therefore I can fix it.
Yeah. See, that's the misnomer, right? I think people are afraid to take ownership. And the irony with that is the moment you take ownership of your problems, you also have now the empowerment to get out of the spot you're in. And I understand why there's a lot of fear around that. But that's awesome. So how old were you when that happened?
30, 31, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Older than I should have been to be still drunk and broke.
Right. Wow.
But it's also, it encourages me because it makes, when I see other people that are my age or, that age and they're still messing up, and I'm like, dude, I turned it around at 31. You can turn it around. So I lost a decade. It also, I start to feel the pains of that now, that lost decade, because my peers are so far ahead of me because they had a decade of not doing that. But that's our lot in life. That's our price. That's the price to pay for dicking around.
So you kind of realize, like, I got to live below my means. I got to do something different. What I'm doing isn't working. What were the changes that you made?
Very simple, actually. At the time, it seemed complicated, but now it's incredibly simple. It's really two things. It's content you consume and people you spend time with.
Wow.
That's it. And
dude, I was literally thinking about this today. Those two things. And you hear it now in the mainstream. You're the sum average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? And there's a verse in the Bible that says that out of the mouth speaks the overflow of the heart. What you're putting in has a direct correlation to what comes out, right? And we get it on a physical level, right? You put junk in, you get junk out. That still translates on the mental and educational side of things as well.
Yeah, I have this theory, like I say, like, people brainwash themselves with what's normal. And so if you hang out with alcoholics and they want to go to the bar 3 or 4 nights a week and get drunk, blackout drunk.
That's normal.
It's normal. I didn't think I was an alcoholic at the time. I thought I was just having fun. I was like, doesn't everybody 27, I'm just partying better than everybody else.
That's funny.
You're just doing it better. Yeah.
I'm just doing it better. So when I stopped intaking alcohol and stopped spending time with folks who wanted to, drink, and I stopped intaking like Jersey Shore, and I started listening to audiobooks or podcasts about investing, my brain just spent more time thinking about those things. And I stopped spending time with people that were talking about drinking and started spending time with people who are trying to start businesses. Now, that is it is easy road to say and a harder road to do, because when you start to realize the mountain of information you need to like actually learn how finance and investing works is pretty significant.
It's not
and
quick.
Also, say it again.
It's not quick. You can consume, but I mean, it just takes time.
it takes time, and it takes time to actually spend money on, like, I had to save up a little bit of money. I had to pay down a lot of debt. I had to start investing and finding out what that feels like. And that's a lot of it. And I had to learn how to money manage, which is not just like, oh, I think I know how to money manage, but actually making the sacrifices and doing it. And then also you can't go from, screw up to a social circle where everybody's very successful, because they won't spend any time with you.
Right.
They're not, their
You don't
time is an
value the
investment
same
just like yours.
things. Yeah, you don't have that like-mindedness yet.
Yeah. So how did you find community? I mean, what were the steps that you took?
So this is something I think about a lot right now, actually, especially in the stage of life that I'm in. I think of this as, I mean this well, but it's going to probably sound a little harsh. Is I think everybody's part of their responsibility is to climb the social ladder. And so if you want friends who are doing better, you have to go out and hunt those people down and sort of convince them that you're a worthy investment. But the reality is, just like every mentor who's really, really, a really great mentor, they want you to outgrow them. So even if you go find the people that are buying single family real estate in your town, they're doing flips and they're doing a good job, it's like, once you figure out what they've learned, how do you go get the next set of people? And so you constantly have to be kind of outgrowing your peers and mentors. And you have to do it in a respectful way, and you can't be transactional. But walking that line is actually quite hard. So when I started, it was easy because I just wanted to consume everything and everybody was ahead of me. So it was kind of easy, but then you find out that there's a lot of like business owners that have ideas that aren't going anywhere because they're only one level ahead of you. So I spent a lot of time, trying to start businesses with friends that went nowhere and not realizing it because I was still new. But you make that progress, and as you get wins, eventually I stumbled across a guy who changed my life. Still a partner of mine today, and it probably took 3 years of me saving a little bit of money and talking about finance and I started talking about real estate investing to people. And one day a guy came into the bank. I was working at the bank at the time. And he's like, yeah, I got 22 houses. They're all paid for. And I was like, dude, how did you do this? Tell me everything.
Right.
36-year-old guy in the military, and he ended up being my mentor.
But now you had, like, that could have been a wasted opportunity on you years prior, because that wouldn't have registered in your brain that he was doing something right. But now you were listening for it.
I was listening for it, and I think you have to have a little bit of courage in this world. In fact, our friend Seth here, when he asked me about the podcast, he almost didn't ask me because he was like, you wouldn't be on my show, sort of that attitude. And
we were just standing there, and you were like,
you put the hot seat on you.
We were just standing there walking, and you were like, yeah, I'll do it. And I'm like, you'll do what? He's like, I'll come on your show. And I was like, that would be great. I was like, I wasn't going to ask.
Yeah. So I think part of when you ask me, like, how did you get mentors and how do you do all that stuff? I think part of it is you have to have a little bit of, I'm still a little bit angry at myself for wasting 10 years. And so now when I talk to somebody, I'm like, you have something I need. And I know inherently that I'm not a taker. So if you give me a little, I'll give you a lot. I'm a good guy to be in debt to. So I just believe that. So I don't have any problem asking somebody for something, because I'm like, look, if you ask me for something, I'll do it. Yeah. So I'm never going to waste your time. And two, I'm now well-rounded and skilled, and I have a big enough network that I'm like, what do you need? And I'll make it a good trade. So you kind of have to have that like little bit of cojones and just be like, dude, I'll ask. So when the guy came along and he's like, yeah, I got these houses. I'm like, can I take some of your time? I'll buy you lunch. I'll buy you dinner. I'll go run errands. I'll be a gopher, whatever it is. But I want to learn how you got 22 houses. And he taught me quite a bit. And that sort of idea, now I think I own more than him. And now that sort of idea has translated over and over again, whether it's, a guy who's become a mentor to me kind of out of the blue is, we talked about Matt Faircloth, who's bought quite a few units. DeRosa Group, they have 1,500 units.
I just want to give a plug for them. Matt is the real deal. He's genuine. He's not flashy. He's not like the YouTube clickbait guy. He's just like he's like a normal guy that's just been doing the right things for a long enough amount of time.
They all are.
Yeah. And that's
Jay Scott, another one. Yeah. Very successful investor, been a good mentor to me for Nope. I've done I mean, we've done a little bit of business, but just a good dude. And then obviously Brandon Turner, who I worked for a year. Like, these are great people. They're great people around. You just have to kind of, you provide a little bit of value and you ask. You got to ask.
Mm-hmm. It's been neat just being able to, first you kind of have to work through some insecurity, and you're like, is this wrong to like try and get around these people? And am I trying? I am trying to get something from them. Is that bad? And then you realize that it's relational currency, right? And when you know your motive, it gives you a lot more confidence to move forward. Like you said, you know that you're not intentionally going to take advantage of somebody, so you can go into a setting and say, "Hey, I want to learn about what you're doing, and I'll do what I have to do." And you put the mental work in to know how you can add value, and maybe it is adding value, but maybe it isn't. But you go for it, Yeah,
I have two opinions about this. One, I think people want to help, so I don't mind asking somebody to do something they want to do. Generally, people want to help, and if they don't. They're pretty, especially a guy like some of these successful folks are pretty good at protecting their time. So if they don't want to help, they're adults, they'll say no.
Yeah.
But I walk into most relationships, most interactions with people, and I just think, how can I make your life better? How can I make your life better? If we start there, anything I need from you will come over time. And generally I don't need that much from people. The way that I sort of cash in relationship currency is I don't learn one to many. So I really need to have a conversation with somebody about specific problems. So most of what I do is I put in goodwill. And then, for example, this year I called two friends who have never really asked that much for over 5 years, but I was able to get a lot of value out of them in return, because I've been friends with them for 5 years when I had a very specific problem. One was Scott Trench and one was Jay Scott, and both of them gave me a significant amount of time to help me with specific problems. But those are 5 years of deposits into the favor bank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So people, and they were happy to help. They wouldn't even have thought about it. Like, they wouldn't have thought about it as
relational.
As anything.
You were
They'd
cashing
be like,
in relational currency. It felt natural.
Alex called me. Who cares? Yeah. Chat with a friend.
When you're starting out in business, that is a hard thing to really buy into. This whole, it feels too nebulous of like, okay, so I help people get where they want to go, and they're going to help me where I want to go, and I have to make money, but you're not going to tell me how that's actually going to come back to me. Yeah, pretty much. You just gotta put it in, and it works. It really does.
In religion, they call this faith.
Oh, let's bring it full circle.
I don't have a problem with this. I'm trying to think back before I was around this mentality. But I will say this: the real estate investor community is the most abundant-minded people. Like,
that's what I felt too.
Yeah. So
why
other industries
is that?
are not the same way. Why is that? I have a theory. What's your theory?
There's a lot of real estate to go around.
Well, there's a lot of real estate, yeah.
And there's a lot of different ways to do it. There's a lot of different ways to make money in real estate. I don't know.
But I feel like it's something more core level than that. I feel like it's not necessarily the fact that the supply keeps you from feeling competitive. I feel like it's a mindset thing that allows you to have that mindset. I don't know.
I don't know. I have this is not a great theory, but it's a theory. I have my houses, and I need one tenant per unit, and we don't share that customer. That customer only has one rental unit at a time. There's no renters with two places. People don't have two places. They have one. So I have my house. You can't have it, and I need one tenant. So we are really not competing for customers. Now, we might be competing for houses. So there might be some, maybe I'm not going to give you I'm not going to give you all of my, I'm not going to give you maybe some things, wholesalers might be a little bit more protective. But once I have that property, dude, we don't compete anymore, because I only need one customer. And if they're my customer, they're not your customer. It's not like I own a Burger King and you own a McDonald's and they're across the street from each other. And it's like, dude, we got to compete to the death every day to see somebody's going to get those burgers. Question is, are they going to go to me or you? Now we're competing.
Right.
With a rental property, it's like, dude, there's no competition to be had. My tenant's my tenant. They're not going to, so that's my theory. It's not great, but that's part of it.
No, I think the other thing about that too is it goes back to what we talked about earlier. When you take ownership for your situation, your success doesn't depend on someone else. And so like I can have an abundance mentality or be generous with information because if I give you that and you use it, great, go for it. I'm still going to do my thing and I'm still going to find success because my success was never dependent on you. And I think that is part of it as well. So, okay, you changed your mindset. You started to network, consume information, change the people you hung around. What happened from that? How'd you make that actionable?
One day I'm going on the internet and I'm like, learning how to invest. And there's the stock market. That's the easiest kind of way. And I was like, dude, if I work these jobs I hate and I grind and I save and I sacrifice, maybe in 20 or 30 years, I'll have $1 million that I can then spend to live. It just seemed really, did not seem appealing. Right.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not solving my problem. I needed what I now know as cash flow. I needed income.
Yeah.
And so at the time I go on the internet and we live in a very different world now. This is 2013. I go on the internet and there's this thing called real estate, which just collapsed to an epic fashion. And so if you went on Zillow, I remember in my little town, my little tertiary North Carolina town, I go on Zillow and there's like 100 houses foreclosed for 30 grand.
Wow.
Sitting there every single day. But I didn't have 30 grand. So, but I said, man, I'll sacrifice. So I sold everything and I lived light. And eventually around 2014, I was able to get into a foreclosure that I moved in, which you can't really do anymore, with an FHA loan. And I think I put like $3,500 down on this $55,000 house, 1,800 square foot. And I moved in and it was like dumpy, but I, put new floors in it and I did a little sweat equity, let's say, put a little paint into it. And 18 months later, I go to a bank and I'm like, can I refinance this thing and pull some cash out? And they said, house is worth 115.
Wow.
Whoa.
And I was like, all right, game over. It's more money I'd ever seen in my life. Like I thought my little $10,000 that I had saved up was a lot. And now this thing had made me, 60 grand. And I was like, bro, let's just, I went on a spreadsheet and I was like, how can I buy 2 of these a year?
Yeah.
For the next 5 years, get 10 of them. And then I'm set for life. And so my plan was 1 a year for 10 years. And then I'll have 10 houses and I'll be a superstar.
And you got your 10 houses and then you quit. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like you quickly outgrew that thought. So
yeah. So, well, I was doing the Burr method. So I bought that house for like 55. I pulled, I think 20 out. I was saving more cash. It'd be 2 more years. I'd buy a house for like 35 or 40 grand, put 30 into it, go to the bank. They're like, it's worth 100, pull my original 70 grand back out, rinse and repeat that. I learned how to do something called delayed finance where I would skip the 6-month seasoning period. So I was in 2017 and 18, I did like 3 a year with the same 70 grand that I just recycled.
How'd you do that? Just find a lender that would waive that? Or were you doing something with how you took title? I mean,
yeah. So what we would do, we would pay for the rehab up front. So it would go on the HUD. You can technically still do it now, but I don't think you can buy the houses discounted at enough like you used to be able to. But basically we'd buy a $30,000 house. We'd put a $30,000 rehab bill on there. And then we'd go to the bank and be like, we paid 60. So give us 60 back. And so they would. And then the house is worth 90.
Yeah, I'm surprised they would do that.
Got to get a lender that would do it.
Yeah, you got to find out.
Did you see how he said that? He's like, you got to find the right
find the right partners.
That's funny.
Everything I do is legal.
Yeah.
Everything I do is legal. Everything I do is legal.
I'm not an attorney.
So when did it click? When did it click then that you were that was fine, but you set your vision a little bit higher?
Yeah. So I ended up 10 in 10 years. I ended up getting 8 in 3 years.
Okay.
Which, by the
And
way,
so-
I feel like that is the trajectory for a lot of people I know. You end up going faster than you think you will, unless you set a stupid goal like 100 units in a year, which, awesome if you do that. But
Yeah, I got a friend who was like, I got to be worth $100 million by the time I'm 30. And I think he's 33 or 34 now, and he might be worth 1 million. And that messed with his head for so long because he like missed his goal. And I'm like, your goal was stupid and arbitrary.
right.
You're just, you know what I mean? I'm like, you're just making your life harder for no reason. So here's the deal. Real estate between 2013 and 2019 was all underpriced. So I misset goals, but also I had a huge market tailwind, market tailwind. I could not do that now.
Right.
Not even close. It'd be way harder now. So, but this is the lot we are given in life. You get, I also wasted 10 years on drugs and alcohol. So people look at life and periods and they're like, some people got lucky and some people, didn't get lucky and it's not fair. And I'm like, the game of life is kind of long and you get a lot of at-bats, and the macroeconomic game is ever changing. So you're going to get lucky sometimes and you're going to get unlucky sometimes. And the goal is to
but you have to be playing. You got to
play.
You got to be in there.
You got to take a lot of at-bats. And once you play this game long enough, what you realize, I think, and this is where Warren Buffett's so good. He's like, it doesn't take me 30 years. It takes me 5 minutes to make $100 million decision, but it took me 30 years of $1 million decisions to get there, sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you play the game a lot, and then when the big wins come along, when you're like, oh, that's a deal, you can go very quickly because you're playing a lot of at-bats. But if you're not playing at-bat and you're just bitching that things are not fair, it's like, well, when they get better, you're not going to notice because you're too busy fussing. So I'm telling a long way to tell the story. So sorry. So 2019, I got bored of single family real estate because I was like, this is easy. I'm going to do something harder. So I went off and I bought a 24 unit apartment complex. I raised $350,000, $380,000 from strangers on the internet that I had from a blog that I had, which is the blog still exists. It used to be called Broke as a Choice.
That's funny. I raised $350,000 from strangers on the internet. That's good.
Yeah. I was on there telling people what I did. And when you make money when you make money and you can sort of articulate that, then people will perk up. So that deal went I exited well, but that was definitely my worst deal. That was a tragic, terrible deal.
All right. Well, we're going to save that for our smaller pocket segment in just a second.
We'll save that one. I learned a lot. And about a year into that deal, I was like, okay, it's stabilized. It's going badly, but it's stabilized. Let me try this again. So we bought a 52 unit. I syndicated that. I raised $1.4 million from strangers on the internet, from a blog and a mailing list of 300 people. And that deal went really good because of all the lessons I learned on the lousy one.
Okay.
And then that's 2021. And then in 2021, I was looking at the market and it had just gotten so stupid.
Yeah.
So stupid. And I really have not bought much real estate since then. And that's when I kind of went and spent some time on cameras because there's this big opportunity in media and content. And now to really wrap things up, we just we're going to put an offer in on a small business here out in Texas.
Yeah. I've seen you posting some stuff on your social channels about
little
evaluating. Yeah, insinuating that you're looking at some alternative asset classes as opposed to what you've been doing. So I was kind of curious to what that was going to be.
Yeah, I'm very good at that little teasers.
You just like drip it out there. Yeah.
Can you give us a hint on what the industry sector is?
Dairy Queen.
Dairy Queen. That's more than a hint.
We're gonna buy a big package of Dairy Queens.
Whoa.
Interesting. Okay. So food industry franchise. All right. You're teasing me now. I want to get into it, but let's back up. All right. So you did the real estate. I think what's cool too is knowing when to pivot. That's another kind of lesson in this, right? Because you could look at this and apply this kind of this generalization of like, look at Alex, he bought all this real estate and you should go do this too. And then you'll get into this market and get frustrated because you're like, but I'm underwriting stuff and nothing's really penciling right now. Well, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, there's a big gap between seller price and, you know, what buying power is. And so it's like, you can't just make this generalization about go buy in real estate. You got to know what to do. You got to be educated. So you pivoted that. How did you get in contact with Brandon Turner?
I met Brandon on his show in 2018. They asked me to be on the Bigger Pockets podcast. And then every year I go to Bigger Pockets with one of these.
BPCon. Oh,
Nice.
And I carry one of those, and I take good photos of events, which are all on my blog. And at the end of 2019, Bigger Pockets, one of the event hosts called me, and she goes, "Hey, we saw you there with a camera. The person we hired didn't take any pictures of Brandon Turner. Did you happen to take any pictures of Brandon Turner?" And I was like, "Of course." So
you're like, actually, I only have photos of Brandon Turner. Like, that's a little weird.
They're like, well, and I met him while I was there, right? We chatted a little bit.
Yeah.
And, you know, casual. Well, 2020, I saw him again. In 2021,
Can I pause
saw
real
him
quick?
again.
I just have this mental image. Like, what if they pull up those photos and it's like Brandon walking to the bathroom, or like Brandon, like the back of his head zoomed in really far. Like he's getting into his car, like not event related stuff. You're a stalker now. That would be funny. Obviously it wasn't those photos because they hired you. So continue.
So they ended up hiring me. And yeah, so every year this guy would see me with my camera, and I would be taking photos and videos. And so when in 2022, he called me one day and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna start a new thing maybe when my non-compete is up, and I need somebody. I want to do a video podcast, and I know you do video, and I know you know real estate. I know you know my story, and we've known each other for a while. So I'd love to maybe you come out to Maui and build me a set and do a mobile podcast." And that's like deep in my wheelhouse. So it kind of worked out because real estate was, to your point about pivoting, real estate, it was no longer underpriced.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a very simple investor. It's hard to clear out through all the noise about the entrepreneurship and the hustle and the you know, all the excitement and the mania. But at the end of the day, real estate and investing to me is incredibly simple. I just want to buy things that are underpriced.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to buy things that are underpriced. That thing's worth 100, I'll give you 80. Like, I'll do that every day. But when things are worth 100 and I got to pay 110 and fight for it, I wasn't into it. So I was looking at deals over and over again in multifamily in North Carolina from 50 to 100 units. And they're like,
North Carolina, it was definitely up and coming, kind of that Sunbelt hot market. Everybody's selling stuff on speculation, right? Hey, rents could be here, therefore we're going to charge you the price to justify that.
Buying a 1980 building with a 5 cap, you know, with no debt, you make 5%. I'm like, dude, that's a lot of these buildings now that I've owned 2. I'm like, these are not these don't just show up and kick off cash. These are tenant problems. These are
deferred maintenance.
The cops are going to be there. This is going to be difficult. So that's a lot of work to make 5%, especially. And then we had already gone through this inflationary period. So I'm like, the rents are as maxed out as they're going to be. This thing's rented. It's fully up. Like there's no room here.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to take a little time and do the cardinal sin of real estate investing, which is I just waited. And I said, well, while I'm waiting, I'm going to travel the world with my camera. That's what got me to, I did that in 21 and 22. In 23, I ended up hanging out with Brandon in Maui.
On your blog, lifeandlens.media, there's like the cover page. You look like a National Geographic photographer.
Dude, I look so cool.
Seriously, I was like, you ever seen the movie Secret Life of Walter Mitty? It's kind of an obscure Ben Stiller movie. You need to watch it. But he like works for National Geographic, but he's like some obscure person in the bottom, like processing like the old photos, you know. And there's this photographer that he kind of idolizes that's out in the field. You kind of look like him. No kidding. Like you need to look it up. It's weird.
So that photo was taken of me in Iceland in 2021.
Whoa.
Went on a photo trip. Got paid for it. So I'll say this, you know, you mentioned pivoting. I think about this a lot, right? I'm not done in my investing journey. I still have more money to make. Also, you know, the market's hard right now and I'm not an expert. So I'm doing the same. I'm in the same struggle that everybody else has, which is like, you know, what the heck do I do with my time?
Yeah.
Where's the opportunity, right? The market's tough right now. I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon. I think we're in for a long haul with the stagflation. And, you know, I don't know the right answer. So it's definitely it's definitely not easy. I don't want to paint some picture like I figured it all out. It's like, no, but it comes back to what we talked about. It's like when I knew real estate was underpriced, I swung the hammer hard. I should have swung it way harder.
I know.
And so what I'll say, the lesson that I'm taking from all this is like, when you're not sure, you make a lot of small bets. I've lost money.
Yep.
Right. I've made bad bets. I bounced around. I do things that are like maybe inconsistent. It's a mess. The story that we tell about our lives is so important because I can tell you a story of a guy who's a muck up, right? Found real estate, did okay, and now is back to kind of being a muck up, right? I'm like kind of floundering. I'm moving around. I don't really know what to do.
Oh, that's your story?
Yeah. I mean, I'm saying I could tell you that version of it, right? But I could also tell you this other story where it's like, okay, I was messing up, found real estate, did really well, got financial freedom, decided to engage with my creative abilities and did very well. And now that the market's opening up again, maybe this small business venture we have works. And if you tell that story, you're like, dude, this guy's a killer.
Right.
But in my head, I deal with this insecurity about like, is this going to work? Is this the right plan every single day? So, with pivoting, I don't have any good advice other than when you're sure, you take the biggest freaking bet. Like you're the easiest person to lie to. So be very careful. But when you're sure, you bet big. And when you're not sure, make a lot of small bets.
That's good. That's a way to consolidate that.
All right, we're going to jump into our smaller pockets segment. So, Alex, go ahead and tell us about your worst deal in real estate. What happened, and what did you learn from it?
I have flipped a couple of houses, which have gone bad, and I've maybe broke even or lost money, and they've been miserable. But my actual worst deal was this 24-unit apartment complex, and it's hard to say it was a terrible deal because I made a lot of money. But I want to explain, because a lot of, we live in this world where everybody's singing their wins, and they're like, look, Alex is a genius. He made all this, this big return. I'm like, dude, I will be flat out honest about where I got lucky and how. I buy this 24-unit. We thought it would make 10%. I found out really quickly after buying this place that I learned one of the big lesson I learned was that there's no such thing as a C class in multifamily. Or excuse me, there's no such thing as a D class. There's only C class. Nobody would ever call their property a D class, but bro, they exist.
That's funny. That's so true.
So we're getting bullet holes. We're getting cops. It's brutal. And what I realized is the biggest mistake I made was we went in undercapitalized. I could not afford to kick out tenants because I had no cash flow. I could not afford to renovate units, and therefore I couldn't get better tenants in there. So I'm just like recycling people who don't pay. And I was just slogging along. I think in 2020, at the end of the year, our first full year, I paid my investors 2% return. And it was the hardest 2% I've ever made. It was brutal. And so the lesson is, do not undercapitalize. It's like, it is the biggest mistake. You can't, when you're undercapitalized, you can't do anything.
But let me ask you a question on that, because we did a 26 unit deal and initially kind of found ourselves in a similar situation. And why did you undercapitalize? That's the question. And then I'll kind of share like what happened with us.
The true answer is I was so driven by my ability to, my desire to prove that I could do this, my want to buy a bigger deal, my insecurity to like level up and say I can do more complicated deals, that I bought a lousy deal because I wanted to try. Because I thought, deep down inside, I wanted to buy the deal. It was not a great deal.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that insecurity is kind of at the core, in a similar way. For us, you start raising more money, it dilutes the investor return. So you're always playing that game of like, raising enough money to make the return strong, but not too much money that it wouldn't entice investors. And we were insecure that we couldn't get people into the deal if we didn't make the return a certain profile. In hindsight, we should have definitely gone in with more confidence. Had we known the market better, I think we could have given away less of a return and not felt as much strain on the portfolio by being more well capitalized. But that's a common thing. It really is. There's a lot of reasons why you would go in undercapitalized, and maybe you don't even realize it. You don't realize you're undercapitalized until you realize you missed your construction budget or your remodel cost. I mean, there's a lot of ways that can go south.
This thing was 24 unit single bedroom assets. I mean, if I had 100 extra
Vanilla.
grand, I would have been fine.
Yep.
If I had 50 extra grand, I would have been fine. Like it was really irresponsible. So this was in 2020. And then 2021 comes along and they print $1.4 trillion in cash. Real estate goes bananas, right? The rates are dropped low. And so somebody comes along and they pay me 1.5 million for a property that I had paid 1 million for 22 months ago.
And you look like a hero.
You were just sweating.
Look at this guy. He's wiping his face. Yeah. So I pay my investors a 50% IRR, right? They give me a check for 60. I give them a check for 130 or whatever it was, or 110. I don't remember what it was. It was something stupid, right? I remember I put in like 70 grand. I got a check back for 131. And I was like, in 2 years. And look, that money cashes. I'll take it. And my investors are happy and they probably know that we got lucky, and I've explained it to them. But, I really want to emphasize why this was my worst deal, because I did everything wrong. The market just bailed me out. And I knew the only thing I did that was really good was be smart enough to sell and not get greedy. What is it? Pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? The broker came to me and was like, I think I can sell that thing for 1.6. I took it at 1.5 and I took my money and I ran. And the guy who bought that, I don't know how he makes money.
Yep. That's his problem now.
That's his problem now.
Yeah.
So, that's good, crazy.
Man. All right, we're going to go into what we call our little nugget. All right, Alex, so this is part of our show where you give our listeners one practical takeaway or a core principle that they can implement to their real estate investing business.
I give this advice a lot. This is maybe my favorite piece of life advice. It doesn't have that much to do with real estate, but in a weird way, it has shaped everything about my last 10 years. Somebody along life came to me and they said, life gets easy when you do these three things. You have one hobby that keeps you in shape, one hobby that makes you money, and one hobby that lets you be creative. I shaped my whole life around that advice. You got to be in shape, because health is wealth. If you're not in shape, everything else crumbles. If you don't feel good about your health, then everything else falters. I think about money as a hobby, not as a career. That's very important to me. I think about it. This is my money-making hobby, and that way it doesn't consume me. And I don't put too much. I don't put my self-worth into I try not to put my self-worth into my economic success. And this creative hobby has opened more doors. This is the best networking tool, right? This thing has given so much texture and depth and substance to my life that I can't explain who I would be without it. So, and I think that other people would be served well if they had something where they actually create rather than just financials, because creating is, well, that's a whole other podcast, but
I would add to maybe kind of spin on the creative side of things, like purpose too. Something that like you is enriching to you that you don't necessarily get anything directly back. Like, and the reason I say that is for me recently, I've been engaged in a lot of different like nonprofit stuff. And at first it was like, man, this is taking a lot of time. But then I realized that my life was out of balance because I was putting so much into business that I started to lose the bigger picture of like, why am I even doing business? And so now that and this is the crazy part, now that I sit on a couple of boards, I'm involved with some different ministries and nonprofits, and like my inner being, like I feel more inspired. I feel more creative. I feel like I'm adding value, and I'm actually networking with people who I'll probably do business with. And so it's kind of weird that way. So, but that's really concise. I like that. So go through it again. It was a hobby that takes care of your body, a hobby that makes you money, and a hobby that gives you a creative outlet.
Correct.
Cool. I like that.
And I love my books. So I'm not saying it's end all be all, but, that little bit shaped me, because I find that most people have one, maybe two, rarely all three. and everybody can do all three, and they're not that expensive. So to do all three of those things. So it's just a good way to get kind of well-rounded. I'm not saying it's end all be all. But yeah.
Have you ever thought about working out?
Have you ever thought about working out? Sometimes.
That's tongue in cheek. If you're watching the YouTube, you understand the joke because he's a pretty fit dude. So, what's been one of the best resources in your business development?
Dude, I wouldn't be here without Bigger Pockets.
Yeah, same.
I wouldn't be here without Bigger Pockets. And they're not the same as they used to be. But man, that's the last 10 years have been shaped by that movement. And that
it really is a movement, community. Isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's kind of it's in a downward sort of slope now. It's not what it used to be. Real estate's not what it used to be, and it got so big, yada, yada, yada. But, there was an era there where it was really life-changing for a lot of people, myself included, and they still do it. They're still a tremendous force for good. But
what's funny is there have been industry disruptors, right? Airbnb, Uber, technology democratizing something. And Bigger Pockets democratized residential retail, like real estate investing. And
for a decade.
For a decade, solid. And now a lot of the people that were those content, like the big kind of ground floor people, part of the reason that Bigger Pockets, like the actual mothership, is maybe not what it was, is because it has launched all of these prolific disciples that are establishing their own brands.
Now you're making it sound like a cult.
Well, I mean, it kind of is,
It's a very inexpensive cult.
It's inexpensive. There, find an inexpensive cult. Okay, Alex, how can people find out more about you and follow your success?
Yeah, go to lifeandlens.media. That's where I write. You can sign up for my newsletter, which I send out weekly. Instagram, Twitter, Alex Scott Felice at all. I'm easy to find. I'm not hiding. I'm loud.
Yeah. Well, we'll put all those show notes. We'll put those links in our show notes. Dude, it was refreshing and awesome to have you on today.
I'm grateful. This is fun. I like what you guys are doing here.
As always, excited that you joined us for another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes. And if you want to learn how you can use your hard-earned capital to diversify into real estate, go to our website, lv5capital.com, and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper. We'll see you next time.